6 a.m. over here in Maui. So yeah, just stoked that we could be on call together.
Yeah, man, it's good to meet you, bro. Been following you for
Yeah.
some time, and I've,
Uh,
been in and around people's lives that you've changed, and it's well, you've contributed to. It's not about you, it's not about I, it's the contribution.
nah,
But yeah, bro, thank you for joining me. We'll just dive right in, man. How are
yeah.
you and what's alive at 6 a.m. in the morning where you are?
Well, I like to wake up just early because I need to go to the gym. And so if I don't get out and get my fitness started first thing, I have a little bit of a difficult time throughout the day because I have so much work to do.
Mm.
So yeah, so for me, what's alive is I've just been working a lot with my Now Academy, which is just my online membership group where we work on um, you know re-indigenization, but also community building and getting people into transformation for their lives through relationships. So it's like involving them to a kinship worldview. So it's just a lot of my kind of work that I do on the daily that I don't always put out on the social media stuff. I have like on there. So that's what I do every morning pretty much. And then we got together. So I'm grateful for this.
Yeah, man. Beautiful. Yeah. Hoping this will set you up for the day. I want to congratulate you though, because you are about to be a father, right? That's happening.
Yeah, man. Like my first child is a girl. She's due June 3rd. So she's a Gemini baby.
Hmm.
Um yeah, I'm excited. It's I don't really go much on astrology, but a lot of people that do listen to my stuff or are familiar with spiritual work, they're like, "Oh, what's the sign?" But here in Hawaii we have our own astrology as well, and so she's coming during the summer months where um, things start to pick up a little bit more amongst the environment. And normally they say these babies have voices. They like to sing, or they can be kind of loud sometimes, or they're good with communication. So I guess that's part of like a Gemini thing too.
Hmm. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard somewhere in some place in the world that every time a new baby is born, that they get given a song, and it's that song for life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels so real, so right to carry a song throughout your life. Yeah, will you be doing?
Yeah. It's no, no, it's beautiful that you said that, and I'm glad you mentioned that because it's such a thing that we're missing in our society as this depth of knowing that when you have a song made for you, um, in the times when you move through different life stages, whenever it gets difficult or hard, right, emotionally or mentally, your people should come and sing you that song to remind you that you're a gift to us, you're a gift to this village, you're a gift to this community, and whatever hardship it is, we're here for you, and we're just going to remind you that you're living and breathing, and we've got you all the way. So that song is meant to just you know, calm the nervous system and bring this person who heard this song since they were in the womb to then remind them of the journey they've already been on and that they got here because of the people that love them.
Mm. Yeah, that's such a beautiful thing about music and story within a song. It brings you back into the places that you are and want to be more uh, in connection with. So yeah, that was what I had an amazing, more contemporary folk singer on the podcast recently, and he
Oh,
talks a lot about this, um, this separation of when we stop singing and stop caring for the land. And it's such a all theories, but like in powerful distinctions of when maybe it just accompanied us in that time we would
mm,
tend to the land. But it's something I ponder about, and I feel like wow, what is missing? Like in England, we were called the singing people, and it was such a big part of our culture to
mm,
sing and carry the songs. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, I've learned about the people too that would walk to different villages and share the songs and the culture. I forget their names, their traditional names. You ever heard of them?
Mm. No,
They're
but
like
like
a traveler type of people.
pilgrims,
Similarly, I think, yeah, they would make
bards.
their rounds. Yes, yeah, they're kind of like bards. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I kind of remember it was a man, Michael Maisie was the one who
Hmm.
had told me about them. Yeah, I can't remember their names right
Maybe
now, but yeah, it's
the Druids,
beautiful culture. Yeah, in a druidic way, but there's actual people traveling. I'll probably remember it later on as we keep talking.
hermit, hermits.
Hermits, no, no,
I'm just saying the
no,
generic
hermits.
names. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing,
Oh, that's
man.
awesome.
So yeah, I'd love to. You mentioned like re-indigenization, and what on like a personal level, what does that really mean for you? And when did that become such a strong theme in your life, or of like this is what you want to spend your time like looking at and speaking to and living?
Yeah, well, that's great. I'm curious as to what does it mean to you?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's to look backward to go forward. It's to
Mm,
tune into what I've been conditioned out of or forgotten. And to re-indigenize means to look around me and to feel connected to that. And then to ask better questions of what's needed now. I'd say in amongst that, it's a connection to lineage, to my ancestors, to my relatives that I've forgotten their names of. And when there's a circle and I ask everyone to bring in their mother, their father, their grandmother, their grandfather, and some people can't remember their names. That is a part of for me is like re-indigenating. It's why have we forgotten our relatives and what a cost is that? What's the consequence of forgetting where we've come from? And when I even speak that, I feel like emotion moving, and it is to feel that emotion move when I am looking at the world and trying to find my place within it. You know, yeah,
yeah. That's that's beautiful, brother. That's why I like to ask kind of, where it comes up or shows up for each person because it truly is like re-indigenization is like a big tree, right? So there's many branches on this tree, and everyone being a part of this root can find the tree and then need to find their branches as well. And the way that looks is, um, maybe I can start it like this, like this isn't only like re-indigenization as I teach it is not just about reclaiming what was lost, it's about remembering what has always been, right? Buried beneath the amnesia of conquest, the asphalt of modernity, these hollow kind of like echoes of a culture that has been forgotten or destroyed or severed. And how do we come back to learn that everything has life around us, right? How do we feed the spirits again? Because sterility is the anti to revival because sterility removes life. So if what was sacred could ever, truly die, it's not just our nostalgic attempt to reconstruct a romantic past
mm,
that was, lost but and has become, part of a museum exhibit. You know what I mean? Instead, what I see is people tapping into this weeping, laughing, dirt covered, flower scented, storm voiced kind of act of becoming human again in a world that's tried to turn people into ghosts, or consumers. So it's a wild act, a feral kind of way of being. So to me, to re-indigenize is to resprout from the root of forgotten memory and to nurture ourselves in the soil of our ancestors who dreamt of us, drinking deeply from that river, right? These rivers of songs, like you were saying in the beginning, right? Breathing back into the existence the names of these places and of these people that used to walk these very paths or used to go to these same bodies of water. And they've been waiting for us you know, to be called back home. And it's a beautiful dance, and many times it can be what you call heavy on the mind because our Western modernity of rational thinking wants to encapsulate things into ideas and concepts and capture essences, but it removes the body. It's almost like we're just walking around with brains on a stick, So we want to come back to our hands. We want to remember how to weave things again. We want to understand the plants and the animals and have relationships outside of just the human. We want to reach towards the more than human, other than human, you know, superhuman even maybe.
Mm.
But it's our feet that will remember the rhythm of the land when we're walking. And it's the tongues that we long to speak in these languages of eloquence and poetry, and that feeds our lives, that feeds these animations of everything around us. So it's really a re-indigenization is really a call back to belong to the places that we are in and where we're at, not in a way that makes claim or ownership, but in a way that offers a devotion and a connection rather than correction. So it's a process, yeah, and it's not easy. Many people want to give up because doing so means you have to rock the very foundations of all the things that you've benefited from many ways, right? Like I love my hot showers and this, I enjoy technology. And a lot of times you hear re-indigenization, someone hears re-indigenization and they think like, oh, you just want to go back to the past or you just want to be indigenous. Well, then, don't use any of the things that the Western world created. That's a deeply wounded person that's forgotten how to grieve and has put themselves into a place of supremacy over other people. So they haven't properly understood their own place in the world, and they're not willing to understand the sorrow that comes with losses or to wail for ancestors who forgot how to sing. You know, because it's really I'm hoping that people that feel called to this kind of thing is because they love beauty. I mean, if they're anything like me, they fall in love with things that are beautiful and ugly. Um, and they don't do it out of duty, but a desire to understand themselves within ceremonious ways, right? Ceremony and prayer and responsibility is CPR, right? That's what happens when you have a society, right? That's forgotten how to breathe. You give them CPR, just like a body that's been asphyxiated, right? You got to give them some breaths of life and got to give them some pumps on the chest in a rhythmic way. That's what we're doing with the society, I believe, with some CPR, ceremony, prayers, and responsibility. So,
Mm. Yeah, is it enough? Is my question. I always
mm,
I catch myself sometimes thinking into these big macro ideas of like, is it enough? We still fall into these systems and structures that hold us. I see it as like a prison we've created for ourselves, and we can't really see the bars from inside. It's an interesting concept. I feel that's what it's like. The momentum. Momentum is a big piece of the past. The momentum of the past is it really takes time to slow down. Uh,
mm,
but yeah, I call that the
mm.
90-year-old smoker debate. Whenever anyone, there's always one person who's like, "Oh, my nan made it to 90 and she's fine. She smoked every day." It's like, okay, then there may be some examples. It's like when people start to bring in, is that what you want to do? You want to go to the past and then you live to about 30, 40 years old, and it's the wounded that come from these black
Mhm.
and white statements, which is a stress response.
Yeah.
It's a challenging, multi-layered, you know, but they're the worthy endeavors for me to pick apart and yeah, to find the rhythms again and to
Hmm.
connect back to these very complex ways. Um, do you know John Vervaeke?
No,
Have you not come across
who's
his
that?
work? He's an intellectual for sure, but he's also gone down like he did a retreat with Rafe Kelly, who does a lot of parkour. I don't know if you know
Oh,
him. And
I know Rafe.
yeah, Rafe. Well, he went on. They did a little collab together, and it was this intersection between the real, tangible, real time meaning making in the world through the body and through movement. But of John Vervaeke talks about the meaning crisis, but from a very intellectual standpoint, but a very poignant one. And it's just he always captivates me with the thing he talks about that there is a meaning crisis. We've spirituality might have got us into trouble and we've thrown it all out and then disassociated from it. Um, but it's important to, I think, one of the most important things of this podcast is like getting people on, such as yourself, that seem to have a deep connection to themselves and what they're doing in this world. And it's my judgment and my projections a lot of the time. because some I find out not to be the case. But
Mm,
it really is like bringing people on to have these conversations. And it's not about telling anyone how to be, what to do next. It's really about just living and embodying away and the manifestation of that being your words and how you hold yourself and the themes that you speak to. But
mm.
really it's rooted in that meaning of like, I've found something. There's something in which awareness I'm living, which has deep roots and it is brings me a lot of meaning. So I'd love you to kind of riff on that of like, how do you
Mhm.
connect to that meaning? How do you make sense of it's maybe you were born with it or created it? Like, well, how does it intersect the meaning making that is clearly, yeah, causing a lot of hardship with people lacking it.
Yeah, this is well, maybe I can, yeah, this is good. Um maybe I can start by speaking on what happens when we are in that crisis. Yeah, because that's kind of stirred me up to the crisis of meaning. And this is kind of things that I like to start with first so we can explore how we reconnect or find that intersection like you're speaking of. Because you know the crisis of this lost meaningfulness or the loss of meaning is not just placed in a psychological dilemma, you know. And I enjoy the work from Rafe because it is back to the body, right? He likes to rewild movement, you know, and rewild is such an interesting term because it kind of insinuates or assumes that we can actually be wild again. But it's a cool thing to say because people are like, oh yeah, wild, this wild places. We want to, you know, be a part of that and find that again because there is that romantic view. But it comes back into the psychology of people because that's just how we were taught, right? We haven't been given the lessons of radical wholeness, right? So like the loss of meaning is a soul deep unraveling. This is an erosion of these unseen agreements that bind us as humans to the living world. So when meaning is lost, life becomes like weightless. Like we don't feel the gravity of ourselves, and you know, not weightless like how you know birds take flight, you know, because they're actually doing something to get there, right? These birds, but it's like in a way that when you sever something, like a branch from a tree, it falls and it dies. And we don't do anything with it. It just gets tossed aside, right? We don't compost it. We don't nothing. We look at it as trash. That's a loss of meaning, right? And without that, right, we ourselves become exiles, right? As the progeny or descendants of people who just were cutting things off and throwing them away. That becomes us. So we become exiles from those old stories, from this very fabric of our own existence. So the way I see it is that when people lose meaning, they become directionless and therefore they become dangerous, right? Because a culture that has severed itself from meaning will replace it with something like consumption or industrialization or with a desire for conquest, an insatiable hunger, right? That no amount of possession or distraction can even satisfy it. And I say distraction because it's like, you know, look at the way we are with social media, you know, in this time now. And this absence of meaning, you know, we don't stop, you know, longing for something. It actually amplifies it. We just forget what we've been longing for, but the longing is still there. So where does it go? Right? Because the forgetting is so strong. We're in a time of amnesia and anesthesia, right? As soon as we try to remember, it hurts too much. So we want to numb ourselves out and we look for the artificial replacements to help us feel some kind of power within, right? To dominate or some form of novelty or entertainment to remove us from what's actually present with us in the time of our remembering. So none of that truly nourishes our spirit, right? So this is kind of the root of what I mean about this crisis of meaning, right? That we're exploring right now. Um, I do not believe that that can happen in isolation, right? I don't believe it's something that comes because we have the perfect route. It's actually coordinateless, and it needs relationships between people and places with ancestry and unseen forces. Those things are just as meaningful when we step out of our meaninglessness, right? It's to look out before us and to see what's really there. What is this great web of reciprocity that is around? What is this frayed edges of tapestry that we've forgotten how to weave ourselves? And what is that waterways that we have within our own homes? Where did they come from? Where are they going? You know, that's a big part of memory too. It's coming back to the water because the water always holds the memory and it'll always make its way back to grandma, to the ocean, yeah, great grandmother. So in that way, the meaning is never truly gone. It's just we haven't put ourselves towards the work that's needed to make that connection so we can bring meaning through. Because these lands are still here, these waterways are still here. You know, these beauties that we see, whether it's a valley or a mountain, is still something for us to take this immenseness from and grieve the things that we've refused to feel. And even in gestures of our own kindness can many times, you know, defy the logic of we shouldn't because we're so obsessed with something like efficiency or effectiveness or technological advancement. So meaning can return to us when we offer ourselves fully in the recognition that to be alive is not about being right or wrong. And it's not just a privilege or entitlement, it's an entrusting to us of people that have come before. And it does demand on us certain things of a reclamation, not ownership. And we can find purpose in that, I believe, when we start making these offerings again, you know, living in such a way that we can sing and fly like birds, or we can, you know, move in ways like herds, you know, of buffalo and, you know, stuff like that. So I believe that's kind of the intersection when we start to get back towards relationships that involve plant, animal, mineral, and ethereal, and that our spirituality can get us into trouble. It becomes a cage when we're trying to conceptualize everything within transcendence or purity
Mm.
or virtuousness, because that's all underpinnings of right and wrong, right? That's all underpinnings of missionization. So what we need to do is come into possibilities and consequences. How do we learn to speak in words that are more full, not just, you know, the surface level, kind of like what we're doing right now. I believe what we're doing right now is like an act of devotion.
Mm. Yes. Yes. I do my best to remove the language of good, bad, right, and wrong, because that is a part of the same thing that separates. And it's important to distinguish and discern of those polarities, because that's what we live within. But when I catch myself even saying we're in a crisis of meaning, it's like, what does that actually mean? Are we doing that with our minds? And I noticed that even when I'm asking you, it's like, okay, let's just hold on a moment because we are the ones defining what this is. And whenever we are judging it to be so, or like I say, the only way you can separate is with your words. You know, when we separate ourselves from what is out there. You mentioned something on a podcast about considering ourselves when we talk about nature and us, and we're like, we're one thing, you know, when you catch people in that same rhetoric of, yeah, I am nature. And it can be problematic because just because you
Mhm.
say that thing, it doesn't, what does it actually mean? Like everything is action. And it becomes like a fancy slogan now. We are nature.
Mhm.
And we've got to, yeah, it's great.
No, it's good. And I'll just, can I speak on
Yeah,
that just a
man.
little bit too? Um, so my understanding, you know, and the way that we learn things, um, in this time, it's always from gathering of information, right? And so we assume that's learning. So we can learn about a fire, right? Let's say we've never experienced one before. We can learn about the fire. We can get pictures of it. We can understand, you know, all the things about this fire and how it's done and how the molecules react and all these things. But it doesn't mean, you know, in order for us to learn something that we have to be burned by that fire, but we actually have to be around it, right? To feel its heat. And that's how we learn, is in the very presence of what that is. Okay. So if we're living lives where all we're doing is communicating through these mediums and we're still isolating ourselves within our own homes and going to different climate controlled places like the gym or the car, you know, and to the workplace, we can't just immediately say that we're a part of nature just because it makes us feel good in the sense that, oh, we're just like the bees. Well, we're not. We actually need to start contributing back and understanding of what stewardship means, right? And stewardship has its own complications within the etymology of it, but the way that I understand it is tending to life. Right? How do you actually enhance the places that are, um, quote unquote, feral or wild, um, and being a contributing, species to all of that? Then I believe we can say things that we are of nature and nature is of us.
Okay, let's dive into that. There's a great saying that we cannot control the return of something as by
Mm,
controlling that thing. We cannot control say biodiversity, for example. We cannot control the return of something by that very act. It has to exist without us. It has to be thriving, and to what you just said around putting your hands into that action of like allowing us to
mm,
participate, the birds, the animals,
mhm,
the plants, and what does it actually look like to not judge what we think is thriving and isn't? And this is the ground I love to speak to and walk upon it almost like how do I be in the world? It kind of gets very heady again of like, am I judging this to be
mm,
the right thing to do, or how do I? It's anything that works is going to remove the mind or the concepts of what I actually think is right and wrong. But yeah, if you could speak on that, that would be
mhm.
poignant.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Let's ask me the question again because I think I'm kind of getting it.
Yeah, so
So one more time.
so when you speak to allowing nature or the places that you are, food to grow, that tree that falls
Mhm.
and we tend to it, we're going to actually be involved. But how do we not judge what we're doing as the right thing and to feel like we have some sort of hierarchy over what we think is right and wrong? Because it's quite a subjective experience anyway. Can you find a question
Mm.
in that? I'm really trying to
No, I
pick,
do. I
yeah.
like get there. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, it's yeah, I'm sensing it. And so, um, this is one of the things about indigeneity that's really important for people who have been, um, so allied or obligated to their modernity, right? So if you're coming from a lens of understanding that has been very conditioned within your upbringing and how you're educated, within your own family dynamics, right? Some of the stories that were told, not they're, they're bad stories. Everybody has stories of challenges and triumphs of master and slave, of genocides, conquests, and revitalization. So are we really seeing the world in that place, right? Are we looking at things of repairing relationships for our own benefit? Is this a return on investment, or are we making offerings, which means
Mm.
there's nothing we're expecting, in return? Are we able to uh, go through these processes of grieving and praising in a world that says that that's no longer valuable, right? And then what does that do to us by still reaching towards it? And am I making myself useful? Is another question that comes up for many people. Is like, is this the right thing to do? Is this purposeful? And I think that speaks just to a profound truth about real things, true things, sacred things. That if we're really in relationship with them, we understand that they do not belong to us. And they're not just products of like our will or of our creation, that they're not under our command. Their meaning and belonging exists just like ours does. They have wants and desires for life, for love, for wisdom, just as much as we do. And so these are not things that we can manufacture, or dictate over because they are existing beyond us. But it doesn't mean we can't come in contact with them, right? You never step into the same river twice, kind of thing. So independent of our wanting or desires, even if we're coming from the lens of a modern person of how we see the world, um, the world is alive. She'll continue to move, and there's a lot of talk on how if we do this, then we'll create a better world, right? A future that's better. Where does that come from? Because I'm not here to create a new world. I'm here to awaken the one that once was. So I'm not trying to control this thing. I'm just having a return to something and not to force it into being. right? Because if you force anything, you're just missing the very nature of the existence of itself, right? This is a very Taoist kind of way of approach, I guess. But if something only exists because we will it into being, then it's all constructs of our own collective impoverishment, right?
Hmm.
We're not able to really see outside of that. So then what do we create from our own urgency to want to save something and to make it this thing because of what has happened? You know, our own desires and the echoes of our needs will always disrupt the actual path that we want to get on towards restoration. So we have to restore ourselves with beauty and ugliness, you know, not just the cream off the top because it makes us feel good. Yeah. So it's a paradox of returning, you know, what are we really grasping for and attempting to recreate? We can't just continuously look at the books of other people who had their own failings and their own malignant egos in a way to create a history that says this is who we are as a people now. So we have to be discerning, like you said before. What does it really mean, right? To be somebody that's willing to stand outside, right? Outside when everything is collapsing around us. Who are we to be the kind of person to call the rain, knowing that a flood will come? Who are we to be the kind of people that would journey far into the horizon on canoes to reach out towards the stars, not knowing where the destination lies? So to me, it's about reawakening what has been lost first and recognizing what that is first before we start putting things under our control as to what it's supposed to be. So we have to get back to something that we can summon towards us. And that takes a lot of grieving. So when you have that kind of a culture, right? Like how you said, it can get really heady. And I can go there sometimes, but I truly believe when we have that kind of a culture going on, there is a desperate need for some kind of breaking down and composting for something else to emerge.
Mm.
So we need to take our urgencies and our saviorisms and our ideas of how this better world, this what you call it, this new world that everybody wants to make. I say make it new and old. Make a new old way and find that within the simple things somatically through our breath, through the way we see things. Because I could tell people so much about, let's just take a ceremony, for example. Is it okay if I keep going?
Mm.
Okay, cool. So let's take a ceremony, for example. So I do many types of ceremonies. Um, and one of them that I've been uh, put through the rites of passage of to receive from my family and my teachers is the sweat lodge ceremony. So for many people who have not gone, their first kind of experience with that is okay, they see the guy who's leading it, which is me. They understand there's a fire there, there's stones that are being heated, and then it's going to go into this lodge, which is a dark space covered in blankets and canvas. And then they're going to go in there into the dark. They're going to see those stones come in red hot. The water is going to be poured on it. Then they're going to feel that heat and probably feel a lot of fear. And all these things are going to come up. And then they're going to hear these songs in a language that they've never heard before because it's an ancient tongue. So all those things I described is just kind of like a person's first step towards a deepening of ceremony that they used to have within their own lineages. All of our people all across the world had different forms of how they participated with this type of sweat lodge ceremony. Yet they don't see the wider, bigger perspective of where did that wood come from that we're using to then heat the stones? Where did those stones come from and how did they get here? And what type of stone are they? They don't know what that lodge is built from, what kind of wood was used. They don't know how the blankets were acquired.
Mm.
They don't know the actual coordination of like how these things are all placed on that land. Why is the lodge there? Why is that land significant? Why is the fire placed in the way that it is? What are these directions of west, north, east, and south, above, below, and within? What do these colors mean that we tie the lodge together and we make prayer ties with? What you see what I mean?
Mm.
With these different medicines that come in, whether it's cedar, lavender, copal, um, palo santo, dolce, like all these different. So you see what I mean? It's like before we start getting to this place of like, this is what I'm doing for my own healing.
Mm.
What is actually happening in the foundational presence of all that is, so that now We're not just removing ourselves from the fullness of it. We're deeply immersed in it. So that takes time, and that takes a lot of presence. That takes knowledge. So what I do as my role as a ceremonialist and as kind of like a spiritual leader is to educate people that you're just taking your first steps, and I'm not going to fault you for falling onto your knees because you stumbled. Because why would we punish a baby for learning how to walk? I'm also not just going to give you this uh, this big bowl of food, expecting you to know how to eat it when I should actually chew up something for you and feed it to you first, because maybe you just don't have the teeth for solid meat. So that's what we call manna as well, is to chew up some of the food and pass on some knowledge.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how I see it.
It's good. It's good to bring in those real life examples. You've just described what is in reference to a peak experience, actually just experience. And like, I was part of a peyote ceremony, and I'm not sure
Mhm.
what I got from the actual quote unquote ceremony, what you could demarcate as the ceremony, but building that teepee, prepping the ground,
Mhm.
like picking the soil and just making sure that ground is ready for the fire to come. So that was the biggest lesson, like
Yeah.
in that space between my thoughts and just learning a lot more deep connection to what I'm doing. And it is
Mhm.
how you bring in people into that experience rather than guiding them online and taking them through experiences where you've done all the hard
Mhm.
work and the graft to set it up and all the chopping the wood literally. How do you bring people into those real life
Mhm.
foundations? A way I've done this in the past is like everyone chops the food, everyone makes the side dish. It's like bringing people into the meal and allowing everyone to cook together. Like, when did we fucking stop doing that as a neighborhood?
Yeah, and so it's interesting because um everyone has a certain perspective of what it means to work. And many times people want things to be done for them. And that's been an interesting thing for me to explore when it comes to um, advertising, you know? When it comes to like advertising for something that you're doing,
Mm.
marketing your skill set or your product or your offerings or something like that. Many times the caloric expenditure through mentally doing the work for people upon seeing you is too much, right? They need to be told directive, like this is what it is, this is what you should think and feel about it, and this is what you should do, right? Call to actions.
Mm.
So a lot of this work, like how you're describing, like when you're there involved in bringing the teepee up, when you're there involved with starting the fire, or you're just there involved with humming along with songs that you don't know, um, is preparation towards the larger body of this spirit that is contained within ceremony, right? And not that we can contain anything like that, like for ourselves. I just use it as an understanding, right? So like we're not in charge of what is sacred, and the sacred does not obey our timelines. Um, but that our return into something real that's alive, that's not ours, takes preparation to be a part of, because our daily lives are not um, they're not conducive to this way of understanding ourselves, because we've been pitted so much into this understanding that like, well, this is mine, this is my family, this is my home. It's a very possessive thing. So then when you come into creating meals, for example, like how you're saying, in preparation for these meals, you're making for everybody, right? You're not doing it in hopes that you get the best morsels of whatever preparation you're creating. So a lot of times with like Maui Mana, for example, the event that I host out here on Maui, we have a day, um, a large portion of one of the days where it's dedicated to making lau lau, which is one of the traditional foods here in Hawaii. So you'll have two leaves. So we call lau a leaf. You have two leaves that are from the kalo or taro, as many understand, and they're like heart-shaped leaves. So we use those leaves, and then we'll put into that some vegetables, some meat, some fats, like sometimes we use coconut milk or cream, and we'll put that inside, we'll bundle them up, and then we'll use two more leaves called la'i or tea leaf, and we wrap those up And so I have the men make about two, three, four of those at a time. And obviously they don't know how to really work with the leaf. They've never done this before. So it's like participating with children, even though these are grown men. Okay. And I was like, I have to remind them like the sacredness of what it is that they're doing. And along the journey, they're making these things. And then by the time they finish one or two, I'm like, you know, you're putting a lot of effort into the creation of this food. You you know this, you're not making it for yourself, right? And then many of the guys will look at me like, oh, we're not? Like, who's it for? Brother, it's all going into the pot together. Whichever one you get, you get. This is for everybody.
Yeah. What does that
So that in
change?
itself, yeah, yeah. And so then now you start to see them like, oh, okay, I'm gonna, then they go, I'm gonna do even better now. They're like, I'm gonna make this next one even better than the ones that I made previously because I thought I was just making it for me.
Yeah, the nice guys
So
come
it's a,
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful thing to see, and I kind of set it up that way because I know they're in their mind because there's it's just such a individuality is such a prevalent, orientation for so many people. So like, yeah, preparation is good. It's key. I mean, it is wonderful to have online communities. It is because it helps them stay engaged with the lessons and the teaching so that when they do finally arrive and they have this visceral experience with me, they've already done a lot of the work to prepare. I've put them in the kitchen already. I've mixed them in the cauldron and now they're ready for the brew. And so my experience now has been really beautiful with people because I'm not just meeting them, on a first name basis upon an event or a gathering that's being hosted. I get to experience them for a time till they arrive. And that is much more immersive for me and for them because
Mm.
we can get to the next sequence or stages of this learning. And it involves a lot of, the realms of, um, people talk about self-improvement or personal development, just in the words themselves, self, personal, right? So the translation that I hope to give to people through that work is what you do as self-improvement or personal development is your way of radically engaging into community because you want to be that best version of yourself, right? So let's work on that for the benefit of others, not just for yourself.
Mm. And what have you seen in the people you've worked with in this way? What ripples have you felt like the effects of the people that you I see becoming a little less individual and a little bit more.
I've seen, I would say, out of the many things that I've been able to witness and receive from this type of unschooling and back to this indigeneity is people want to care because they care so deeply, but they have an insecurity that if they're caring so much and they put themselves out vulnerable in that way, they're going to get hurt. And people are afraid of that hurt, afraid of wanting to belong so bad that they are rejected. And so they might learn these things and they'll want to step into it because they know it's good for them, but there's still an underlying fear of not truly belonging. And it's that way that prevents a lot of these teachings from really making it into the soul, right? Into the body. So there's a change in the sense like, okay, I want to be a part of this community. So then they go to the extreme, right? I'm going to do everything I can to just be a part of this all the time because I want it in my life all the time. And that in itself, you're going to break, right? Too much too soon, you're going to break. Too fast for too long, you're going to break. So rather than doing that, my hope is that as we continue to learn and to teach this indigeneity, this re-indigenizing, is a form of communal building within the spaces that you are, one step at a time, right? Self-led in your life amongst others that are with you, so that in a way that is being created for the expansive environmental benefit, right? So it's hard for people to grasp because a lot of times they'll see me doing something or I'll teach them some stuffs, and then they get so excited about it that they want to take it on themselves and start to become the thing. But they actually have not, gone through the years of ceremony and ritual and rites of passage that I have gone through. And so there's a little bit of like, how do you tend to the thing while also giving them connection so that they can correct on the path themselves. So I always encourage, like, if you're going to receive something from me, I'm just simply a bridge. but you need to go to the source. If you're living out in the UK, what is your Celtic ancestry? What is your Druidic ancestry? What is the languages that are there and that are present? And so I can teach people this understanding, but it can't be mimicked because every time you try to mimic, right? Mimicry, there's always a cry in me, me. See what I'm saying? Mimicry, there will always be a cry to me, me, because it's not about you. And people forget that a lot of things that I'm doing, that I'm in service to, is because I have a kuleana, a responsibility to take care of my community as a spiritual leader, as a man of my community. If somebody needs healing, I go. It doesn't matter, what I have going on in my personal life. I have to clear myself, get myself oriented and integrated so I can go there and be there for the people. And it's to be of service. I'm not asking like, oh, okay, well, this is going to cost you this amount of money in order for me to perform this duty. I said, no, it's a duty to my people. But then I have to discern, right, for people as well, that like, I'm not just doing this out of the kindness of my heart, even though that's there. I'm also doing this so that you understand how to move in this direction of wayfinding that is, you know, not always clear, but I can bring some clarity, right? I can bring some clarity because of the ways that I've moved through it. So it's just preparations for everybody to then find themselves in that kinship worldview, but also not being afraid, right? Being bold in their life, to be okay with a broken heart, and not just okay, but to live through it. And that's why grief is so important. But yeah.
Yeah, there's so many threads there. He landed on grief and he's like, ah, he opened another door and it's like, okay. I, I'd love to read something to you actually about grief. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Feels the right time. Francis Weller, he
Hmm.
was it the antidote to depressions is sadness, and it is sadness that must be taught. To be heartbroken isn't a diagnosis, it's a skill. You don't learn about these things in order to have to do them or to be able to quit doing them. You learn these things so you can do them well. That was from Di Wise. Yeah, I went down the rabbit hole of him and Stephen Jenkins so much. I know you're a fan of.
Yeah.
Yeah, Grief Walker. Shout out to that film. It's
Hmm.
free on YouTube. But yeah, I've heard you speak to this before as well. And um, to love something completely is to grieve because to love something completely means you know that it won't last and you have to love the ending of it. And that is no poignant
Yeah.
than in a relationship. And you can reflect all these points that I can reflect all these points that you're talking about to the micro of being in a relationship in divine union with another. It's like, yeah,
Mm.
like I don't want to sacrifice so much. I don't want to come all the way to you because I'm scared of getting hurt. And we can all
Mm.
have that tangible feeling of, yeah, I hide from myself. I don't fully give because I'm afraid of what you might see and what I might be so vulnerable to overstretch. And yeah, everyone's scared of that. It's a real thing. And
Hmm.
I don't envy anyone to walk this path or to to start living in this way because yeah, it comes with a big risk and a big consequence. But I know nothing worth doing was ever easy or worthwhile was ever, you know, easy. You spoke about,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if you want to speak to anything
Um,
on that.
yeah, I can. Did you have another question though?
I was gonna dive into your rites of passage and what's made you so humble in my judgment.
Yeah, okay. Well, I can get there too, through this. So, when I think about this, and the grieving and in that way too, like when you talk about, divine union being in partnership and fully loving, and that comes with all the hurts and pains that we've experienced in the past, right? With past relationships. And so us as ourselves, and when I speak on this too, with like the new old way, how do we be present in our time that we have now to bear witness to the things that have gone on in such a way that we can carry that pain with us as a beautiful burden, not something that weighs us down, but just gives us the gravity of something worthy to hold. So then the future will come in a way that we can not force it to be, but we can be in its creation as we live through it fully. So we can cry those tears that have been dammed up, for too long. And so the beauty of what you had read, from Die Wise with Stephen Jenkinson is I had grown up learning traditional ways through my lineages, whether that was from the Native American side or the Hawaiian side. Like, so the Kanaka way was my first introduction, right? As learning chants and dances and dedicating myself, to a life that was countercultural, you could say, but it was an indigenous um, wisdom. It was what I was attracted to because I was not only dancing in halal, but I was also performing in luau's, right? Which are like, Polynesian review shows. So I'm on stage, you know, performing my dances for others' entertainment. So the people that are witnessing me, they might hear me say some, clever things or things that resonate with them, but they're still watching a show. And if they're not willing to put themselves embodied into the experiences of, say, like an
Mm.
indigenous person, giving them that, then they're not fully touching it, right? So this is where we go to about, like how you're saying, that we don't just learn uh, grief so we can do grieving better. Like, no, it's already waiting for you. It's there. It's inherent into you. You were born with this way. It's a vital necessity of the human to do such things. And it's not even for our own healing. It's to be who we are. And so, it's the same thing with like meaning. We don't go around studying meaning, which is what philosophy does for a lot of people, right? We're not just studying that in hopes that we can have meaning. It's like it's already meaningful if you're willing to surrender to what it is, because meaning will find you because you are alive. And so it's a matter of understanding the fractured nature of who we are in this time that we're in, and to not necessarily resist it, but to find the friction that's there so we know where we're at and we can move through in that way. So knowledge and embodiment is key. You can't just understand something intellectually, you have to live through it. And then there's a wisdom that comes when we do it. I can't explain to people what it's going to be for them because everyone has a unique experience and also a connection to spirit. And they also have lineages of ancestry that I don't specifically know of or am aware of. But when we can do this real work of just leaning in a little bit more, not leaning so fully that, our chins are too projected and then our shoulders round, we're right here, we're standing up, nice and straight, upright human. And just learning how to surrender and when it arrives without letting it break us, right? So we don't need to numb, we don't need to fear, we don't need to distract. We don't even need to try to fix it. We just move through with what we got and continue to share the stories. So this brings me to that understanding that I have comes from years dedicated of being without a lot. So within the cultures, I would go out into nature for days on end and nights with no food or water and just be there, sitting in one spot. And that does a lot to a person. You want to talk about slowing down. Oh, let's slow down. The mind might race. There might be a lot of things haunting you for the first day or so. At least for many people that I've seen do it for the first time, it takes them a couple of days to really relax into the rhythm of the natural world that is surrounding them. And on top of that, too, is like when you're dedicating yourself to a culture, you're memorizing songs and chants that are 15, 20 minutes long, and you're studying these dances and you're performing them within your halal multi-generational learning cultural learning schools, where you're not doing it for the benefit of yourself, right? I'm not doing a show, I'm not performing on the stage. I'm doing this for my people in the places, our sacred places that are going to be revitalized through our actions and our behaviors, right? Whether the larger modern society of people, of tourists that come recognize that or not, it doesn't matter, because I am retracing the steps that have been walked before me. And so those rites of passage invigorate a person into purposefulness and meaning because you simply participated. But it's going to take something from you because it needs to, because there are spirits and ancestry and the world around you that needs to be fed in some shape or form. So through these ceremonies, through these rites of passage, knowing that I can go there, not as a test of my mental steel, but of my ability to surrender to what's there. then the whole thing just begins to open. So that kind of devotion is because there's discipline. It teaches me that no matter what, 4 times a year, I'm going to be going through something similar. I've been out in canoes for days on end without food or water and watching the ocean come alive all around me because the world begins to get curious about me. Like, oh, is this one is still here after all this time? He's not like the other ones. So you start to see more of the fish and the sharks and the whales and the things that start to come. You start to see the stars glisten and shine differently. You get to see the weather patterns. So to me, you know, these rites of passage, as I call them, for people to have an understanding, uh, they have been the fundaments, right? The fundamental elementary school that I've participated in for years. You know, it's been, 20 years. I've dedicated myself, 20 years plus. I've dedicated myself to this way. So once you do that, once you look, you can't unlook. You can't unsee what you saw. And you cannot be afraid to look again because now your perspective of the world that is around you is not, in my mind, something that you have to be anti against, that I have to be against. It's something that I can now move and co-create in a different way that many people don't understand. So for others, they'll look at what I'm doing. It's like, oh, this is so innovative. It's so revolutionary. Like what a amazing, thought leader you are. And it's like, no, actually, I'm just bringing something so ancient and it looks new and it looks cool because it's in you too, and you just forgot. So
You resonate with the term thought leader.
it's what people say,
I know,
you know.
but it's kind of it's against, isn't it? In a way of like it's less about the thought.
Yeah, that's about the thought. And I don't really, I don't be people. We need leadership. That's true.
Hmm.
But we also need teachers. We need people who are willing to be educators, and the thoughts are great. You can also have recreational thoughts that lead you into these caves that you can't see the light out of, right? You kind of get stuck. But there's a difference between a cave and a tunnel
Yeah, for sure.
because you can get through the tunnel and find the light. But in the cave, you have to come back out.
Mm.
You got to go back where you came from. So,
What would you say is the hardest thing you've done in your life? The most challenging?
oh man. What's coming up for me right now is becoming a father. With all the things that I've done, like Sundance ceremonies where I'm dancing from sun up to sundown, no food, no water. I've dehydrated, I have a heat stroke. I pierced myself, um, giving my blood offering and sacrificing my body, for this culture, for this spirituality, and that's really difficult. But becoming a father has been the most challenging thing because now I have to really take a hard look at myself. I can't just look at this, you know, dutifulness that I feel for my culture, that I have to do it for the culture, I have to do it for my people. So now I have to do it for my daughter. And she's going to be around me all the time. The people aren't around me all the time. My daughter will be, my wife will be.
Mm.
So who am I now? Who am I going to be? Am I going to keep up with the old patterns of Kale's insecurities and imposter syndromes, and his bad habits of wanting to drown out his sorrows through alcohol because nobody understands him? It's like, I can't do that. I can't be that person. I have to be this person, that my father couldn't be for me. I have to be the man that, not that my father failed me, but the worst example can be the best example. He showed me what it's like to have an absent father figure in your life and what it actually does to you. And I'm not going to let my daughter feel that from me. So this is the hardest thing I've been asked to do now from ancestors, is that my mother died in August and I'm still reeling from that death and I haven't fully recovered. But I've disciplined myself in this devotion through fatherhood because I found out that we were pregnant pretty much like a month later, like a month and a half later in October, because I did the things necessary that I needed to do because I wanted to call my mother's soul back home to Hawaii. And I wanted to be sure that her soul could come back into a vessel, into our family again. And I did those ceremonies and I did them in ways of the tradition. And I truly feel that through that grieving of her death, I also get to praise life through the birth of my daughter coming in June. So it's been the hardest year of my life, to experience this. You know, I was at Sundance in June, death of my mother in August, conception in October, you know, and baby in June.
Mm. Yeah, completely. Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing. And the preparation for fatherhood, what does that entail over the next few months as it
Oh man,
draws
this is my
closer?
first child. Yeah, it's my first time. So I've really been reaching out, to a lot of men in my life for guidance.
Mm.
Like, what should I do? What should I be asking for? How can I show up better? And, with my wife, it's like, you know, I need to wake up early, not only take care of myself, but then get her prepared for the day. So like I make sure she get her eggs and she gets her tea, like all these things set up. And then when we're together, I spend quality time with her and with baby, and we learn together, right? We understand like where she's at, right? In that progress from the different trimesters, right? And then myself, I am finding that navigating the relationship is so different now because she's going through so much. And she gave me this example. She's like, when there's the Tour de France and then the cyclists are there and they're working all hard. It's like, that's me. And you're kind of like the person that's in the car next to them, like kind of cheering them on. Like, here's some water. And they're like, oh, sorry, I drank the water. Like, I give you another water. And so I'm learning a lot of humbleness, and I'm learning to not take anything personally and to understand that there's an ecological experience, a biological transformation that she's going through that allows her to take her place amongst her mother and her grandmothers that have come before her. So it's a sacred act that is, you know, to me, that I've heard from many fathers reflect this back to me, and they'll send me messages and I'll listen to them, like two, three times, throughout the day. They're like, this is the most, sacred act that you can be a part of,
Mm.
to step into fatherhood in this way and to be there for your partner and so lovingly and nurturing with all of your own faults and mistakes and not showing up in the ways that she really wants every time. But don't let yourself feel that mistake as if it's a failure. It's just you learning. So just get back up and keep showing up for her and for your child, and take that deep responsibility of knowing that you're just simply here to be guided. And that way of being guided will make you stronger and
Mm.
it'll make you smarter because you're willing to serve and to listen, to be in that space with her. Because everything that she's doing, just physically is one thing, but then emotionally and spiritually is a whole another thing. So I can understand, but I'll never be able to relate. So as a father, it's my duty to know that as long as I continue to give my prayers to the altar, to give my prayers to my mom and to my grandmothers and to her mother and her grandmothers, that herself can be full and blossoming throughout this pregnancy. And then the hope is that upon arrival of this little baby, this little ancestor we call back, that the birth will be smooth and healthy
Mhm.
and full of life. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely calling that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ah, beautiful, man. Um, I do want to touch upon something you often speak to, which is limitations and
Mm.
knowing your own limitations, and then what to do once you do realize them and why that's so important to you. And I think what comes close to that is like the sacrifice that you're willing to make to be a father or to have the Now Academy. Could you talk a bit about like what you've had to sacrifice in your life? And I'm sure there are more to come, but it is very linked to community, to all the themes that we've really spoke to. It's like it does come with sacrifice, even looking towards older ways to learn from, like the sacrifice that we have to make. And yeah, I'd love you to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, man. Becoming pregnant, and just being a man through that pregnancy, uh, your limitations get really clear. Your boundaries get really clear.
Mm.
Previous to all of this, I was very much the kind of person of like, okay, it's all good. we just move on. We just take the steps necessary to reclaim, and then we'll move forward in a good way. No worries. Because my boundary was that it was loving. I wanted it to be a loving one. So, for example, it's like if there's people who are not willing to step on this journey with me in the way that I see fit for my family, then they just don't need to be there. Maybe they can come back, but right now it's just not the time because if they're too personally involved about their benefit that they receive from me being a part of their life and they're not concerned about what it means for me to live my life, then it's not needed. And so I'm willing to make those sacrifices, right, upon people that I have close relationship with, a personal relationship that are close friends, even family members, because I believe that this pregnancy, for many people in their lives, if they truly want to hold that sacred and dear to them, they're not going to allow people's own personal, desires and wants to ever intrude upon what it means to bring another life into the world that should never have to carry the weight of our inabilities and our poor excuses and our lack of discipline and connection to these things.
Mm.
So I can make these sacrifices willingly for the benefit of my daughter. And it doesn't make me an asshole. It doesn't mean I'm giving like the middle finger to somebody. I'm just saying we've reached a point that we've gone far enough. I have to carry this one for myself and for my family and for my wife and for those that are with me because there's no going back, right? There's no going back. I can't, it'd be a dishonor for me to pretend that somehow my pride is more important than what my family is gifting to me, right? Because that's the powerhouse. So the sacrifice is this less movement with individuals with the hope and the promise that some kind of gain will be made, right? Whether that's financially or skill wise or anything like that, and more focus on me developing myself with my skill sets, with my financial abundance, with my clear discernment and connection towards the place of destination, which is the arrival of this child. So it does influence me now to look, okay, I can build my community here on Maui and I can also do it globally through this medium. And I can also offer things like events and gatherings in due time with the right people because I've been cultivating them through and through, not just as a friend, but as a spiritual leader, as a guide, as someone that sees things further ahead than just where they're at. So that's led me to really work on my nonprofit with Makoa Quest, where, we take people out on guided tours in the jungle on bikes or on kayaks or canoes, or even hosting ceremonies with them, whether it's with Ava or Kakao. And then also deepening their their groups of people, right? So we'll have different retreats come to Maui all the time. And so they'll invite me there as a cultural host and to invigorate them with some of the work that I do, which many people would refer to as like ho'oponopono. I call it ho'omana. So that's been one. And then with the Now Academy, it's been such a gift because now I get to see what is needed for the people by checking in with them by doing like three live calls a week, which is one's a men's circle, one's a community call, and then one's a live Q&A. And through that, we get to piece things together for them through the coursework in the classroom. And so that's been super big for me because if I didn't make these sacrifices in my life to cut off certain relationships, and to not be dependent on certain ones, then I wouldn't have fully lived through this, which is going to bring the most benefit to my family, which is I become sharper, clearer, dedicated, and stronger, powerful, within myself and with the guidance of ancestors and spirit. And yeah, it's meant everything to me. I wish I had become a father when I was younger. It would have given me better direction. I think I would have felt this way when I was younger, and it would have saved me a lot. You know, and so limitations, correct?
Mm.
That's what we're talking about. So I have limits. I'm just a man. I have vulnerabilities. I have fears. These limitations are the edges, and I don't always want to go through them. I don't always want to jump off the cliff like I used to. I'm now vulnerable, even more so than ever, because my dedication in my life to my child and to my wife means that I'm holding something so precious that I can't let any harm come to them. I can't allow anything to ever take something from them. As a man, for myself, to adapt and to learn to know that there's a boundary that needs to be set out of respect and honor for who I am and my family. I can't waste myself on battles that don't serve this. I can't waste myself on burning out on things that I'm just trying to prove to others about my own self worth. I can't do that. It doesn't matter. What matters is the grace and the gift and the service that I can give to my child and to my wife. And that is limitless. That is limitless.
Mm. Yeah, you speak with passion, such passion.
Uh, Got me crying a little bit.
Yeah, well, it is the root of that is to suffer, right? In the process,
Yeah,
a little bit,
it
a
is.
little bit.
Hmm. Truly.
Yeah, to truly give yourself to something, you really see that stepping into to truly unwavering, no doubt, no limiting beliefs allowed. It's all or nothing, and I see that, I
Mhm.
feel that it's fucking powerful and infectious to consider and to witness because if I take that approach to everything I do, like yeah, nothing's gonna stop or get in my way to really, yeah, empower myself in that thing I'm devoting to. And that's what it is devotion, right?
Mhm.
Outside of you, outside of you. And people
Mhm.
have moved mountains for that, whether it's a child, your
Yeah.
family, but real devotion to something greater. And that's what propels us forward as men.
Mm. Yes, it does, and it does. And thanks for relating to it all too. Because like I said, like this is my first journey into fatherhood, and I had many fathers saying, "Welcome to the club," you know. And they're like, I think like we have a different understanding now, don't we? I'm like, yeah, we do. But I I look to them for guidance and for help,
Yeah.
because some of these men in my life, they have adult children now. Their kids are now in their 20s.
Mm,
And there's others that I look to, they have twins and they were just born. And then there's other men in my life who I'm close with that are pregnant now as well, and our children are going to be raised together.
mm,
And so there's a sense of community that comes around the children. And I believe all of our traditional indigenous cultures were in service to that always. Like our lives, as adults, is to help those coming in and those going out. That's our life. It's not for us. We're not living our lives for
yeah.
us. And that is a remnant. That is a inability to have rites of passage throughout our society so that we can let the child die, our boyhood die in a healthy way to be composted into the man that needs to live. And a lot of the teachings through, the ways that I've learned in the lineages is like the boy must die. He must be put to the fire so that the protector can come, that the teacher can come, and that the guide can come, because we need to make room for the child that's coming, because we don't own them, right? They're just simply on loan
Mm,
from the ancestors. They're simply put into our care and they're entrusted to us. And so it's our task to love them so well that they don't grow up searching for what they've already had, and that they don't grow up looking at, their life as something that's empty because they were missing something that they needed from me or from their mother. And yeah, we'll make mistakes, we'll fall. We're not going to be perfect parents. We're human beings. We'll lose our temper, look, probably like fall short in all these ways too. But that's why it's important to have community, real community with others that want to raise children together, that want to be on land, that want to cultivate the ways of our ancestors and have the courage to make these bridges and these repairs, not because things went wrong, because everything's bad and wrong. It's because I love you and I'll do better. I do. And I'm going to do what's needed and necessary amongst those other fathers who see it too, because they want to be present and they want to be whole, not absent or broken. So I find strength in other men in that way,
mm.
you know, you know. It does take sacrifice though, you know.
It
It's not comfortable.
it takes sacrifice. It also takes asking for help and what you're doing. What you spoke
Yeah.
to initially, you're like, I'm fucking asking the questions to the people that have come before me in this way, and that's so important. And I think a lot of men in all aspects of our lives, and like women depend on help. Their life depends on help, right? They're rooted into the earth through their cycle, through the birth, and they can't do it alone. Like it would have been a very ancestral thing to consider women needing to be supported, and and men don't have that. So, well,
Not
and
in the
now we
same
don't
way.
even, well, we kind of have a different approach to it, but now it's like, now we don't have to ask for help. Our life doesn't depend on that. So the awareness of knowing that because of that very reason, if we're not aware of it, we're gonna we're gonna get into trouble. So yeah. Yeah, man. Great. Now Academy. So this is your main focus. Is this
Yeah.
your big thing? And is this the first iteration of it?
Yeah, I just started it in January. And so we have like about 20 members right now. I haven't really been pushing for membership a whole lot because I've been wanting to cultivate like, okay, what is this? Because I'm the type of person where it's like, okay, I see this, I'm gonna go for it. I have a target, just gonna hit the target. I might not get a bullseye right away, but at least I went for it
Mm,
because then that means when I'm taking action, the energy is there. You know, if you build it, they will come. And so in this process of the Now Academy, the new old way, the first iteration right now that I had put out was having people work on 5 pillars of first physical, right? Mental, emotional, spiritual, and relational. And I do it in that order. And it's just foundational courses. It's a huge module. They get all kinds of things, lots of value in it. So that was the first process was like have people go through this and then they can get towards the grief and praise and the re-indigenization and they'll always have access towards the recordings, right, that I've done with all the calls. However, what I am finding is once again, too much too soon. These courses are so dense for a lot of people that they're not able to move through them um, in like a paced way for themselves. So I'm restructuring it now so that they're given one thing to do a day at a time.
mm,
And I'm making a process to where it's going to be like a full month of just a day at a time so that they can just focus on that because everybody has busy lives, everybody has families too, and they have careers and things to do, right? And then we have like the younger people who join who are a little bit, skeptical because, there isn't a whole lot of trust from the younger generations towards the older generations, right? Because in the States, I'm a quote unquote a millennial, right? So my process now is how do I get younger men and women involved? And then how do I get these people that are here, that are adults, to start shaping and molding themselves in preparation to be in their full adulthood, fully fledged and as close as we can get for these generations coming, so that we can actually have a community that has elders, adults, and younger generations coming. So the Now Academy was just about bringing that ancestral intelligence through, not just the artificial intelligence, you know what I mean? The original AI and to allow that to then be brought in with innovation for the modern methods and innovations that have occurred and cutting edge technologies. So getting people into a place of presence and in a place of navigating those edges where they're not afraid to participate within community because again the insecurities will come and the very thing that we need right in community is a village mind. Stephen Jenkins talks about this
mm,
a lot. If it wasn't for Stephen, I wouldn't have been able to have the other piece of the indigeneity and like what has happened in settler orphan wisdom. So the village doesn't just show up because we want it. It doesn't just show up because of all the things that we think we need from it. That's not how it works. The village shows up because we work towards it. We cultivate something within ourselves and with others. It's a living agreement. It doesn't have to do with proximity or place. It's a living agreement between you and I. We're saying, hey, if I rely on you in these small little micro commitments, which means if I make this little story about myself and give a piece of myself to you, are you going to receive it? And you're like, yeah, I'll not only receive it, but it'll make me reflect about who I am. So I'll comment on this and I'll like this. And then when I see you on the call, I'll reflect to you about how it's affected my life. That's the real learning, right? Because we're not really face to face. So it's not within the firsthand experience, but it's something that prepares us for such things because then now the real thing is people might come from me because of what I'm teaching and what I'm showing
mm,
and how I present myself to the world, but they're going to stay for that connection because then now they are reliant upon others. We're not self-reliant, reliant on each other to move on these paths together.
mm.
So it's my job, right? My duty, my responsibility, my kuleana as the teacher and the leader is to give them pieces at a time so that this village mind can come through and the village can actually show up through the creation of others' willingness to participate, not perfection. And so that's what I've dedicated myself to a lot. Still doing work, Sacred Sons as a co-founder, still doing work with my nonprofit. But, the way of the world now, personal branding, right?
Yeah, I needed to fucking hear that. It's there's no models that I'm following. It's like creating the model. And I'm failing a lot, in
Mm,
creating community and creating a space for these conversations, for these reflections and agreements. And I
hmm
noticed myself failing in that, wanting to like not overstretch, but also not fade away and finding the balance between the two and becoming a leader. But then again, imposter syndrome creeps in. It's like, who am I to lead this? This isn't about me, but it is at the same time. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really a beautiful dance. And I will get there, but yeah, it's good. I needed to hear that for sure. Because it's so important. So important to call others in a way that feels, yeah, to their benefit, and not because I'm doing it to like to be seen doing it, you know. Yeah. All right, man.
Yeah.
We'll wrap this up. How do you want to leave this? What do you want to speak to? Anything that we've missed? Anything you want to point people to? I'd love you to share.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's just yeah, just reflections of depth that have come through these questions. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Thank you for inviting me onto this call, onto this podcast that you host. I'm grateful for this because it does help me understand myself better through these questions because I can at least step out of the perspectives that I'm holding and drop into what you have carrying too, right? So that helps me have layers of meaning for my life. So thank you for that, man. And thank you for the work and prayers up for you to continuously move in this work that enlivens and invigorates you in all the ways that it does. And so for me, um, in preparation, like to become a father, with baby's arrival and the work that I'm doing with Now Academy and all the other places. For those that are listening, if anything that I've said throughout this time of conversation, with Chris and it resonates with you, check out the Now Academy. You know, it's right there. It's 7 days free. I'll guide you along the way. You'll get a call with my Uncle Song. You'll get to see me. We'll be on calls. We can even coordinate things so that you feel more welcome. But please come check it out and join because if you've been searching for a way to not just have personal development, but a way that your um, journey, your process of becoming a better version of you, and you see that as a contribution to a collective, well, it's right there. Now Academy is built for that. We're built for this. We're built for community building, and that's really, where I'm at with it. And it's just $30 a month. I mean, it's pretty much like one night of eating out here on Maui for one person.
How
So
many members do you
on
have
my,
having? Is it for a period
we have
of
about
time?
20. We have about 20. It's just a lasting membership because along with joining for that 7 days, see if it feels right. Afterwards, it'll be just every 30 days, you just re-up on that because it's a membership fee. But we get members towards discounts for events and gatherings. We do merch because I have my own clothing brand coming out too. It's dropping on the 22nd. And it's just called Now Clothing, New Old Way Clothing. And so, yeah, it's just all these types of things for me is just putting it out there, putting the message out there. If it resonates with people, come through. If you've been wanting a place to really discover yourself through ancestry and through lineage, and then also moving through the heartaches and heaviness of modernity while still making progress in your self journey, do it amongst others who are all on the same path. That's why I made it.
Yeah.
I didn't just do it for me. I did it for me too because I wanted to learn how I could step in more deeper into my teacher and leader
Mm.
parts of myself.
Yeah,
But
you've answered my question. My question was going to be, what advice do you have for someone like me or a man stepping into leadership and wanting to be accountable, but also remain in integrity? Do you have, this is, you know, a way, um, but people
mhm.
talk about sponsorship, they talk about supervision, they talk about mentorship, therapy. Like, what would be your advice to someone that's holding space, just simply?
Oh yeah, man. If oh gosh, if you're holding space in that way, whether you're a coach or you're a mentor or you're a ceremonialist, the first thing that comes up for me immediately is take care of you
Mm.
because you're doing so much. Whether you're doing it for free for your community or you do it as a living, you gotta take care of you. You gotta really find what that means, and not just enhance that, right? Because it's always like more, do more, be the more. Our society has enough of more. I think what we need from our teachers and mentors and our coaches and community leaders, whoever they may be, is to reach more in depth to themselves. Because I see a lot of that too. I see a lot of the people out there putting themselves out there are not actually taking care of themselves or doing the work for themselves. They're really good at telling others to do it, but they're really bad at doing it themselves. So I encourage all of you out there, on that path, take care of yourself, do the work yourself, and be what you say you are, for your people because they deserve that. They've earned that if they're working with you or if they've given you anything. Be healthy, be happy, be in harmony, and show up in the ways that you're asking others to do too.
Mm.
I have to do it every day, nonstop.
Yeah, I'd add like notice what you're telling others to do because that is exactly that's exactly it. And it's often we know it because we experience a lack of it and it's the voids the value. And then we project that onto others. And that might look like, speaking to others about it, but it's also like, what are you judging others and start doing that for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's time to live through it, right? Be a living example, not just conceptualizing and
Mm,
selling it, right? Because once it becomes lived through,
no.
it's natural.
Wellness is an industry, not a state.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
For
Okay,
sure.
beautiful man. Thanks so much for coming on, man. And yeah, just celebrating you and yeah, in awe of just the way you speak and yeah, it's just you speak with such vitality and it's yeah, it really helps. And I know you're an edge for some people and that's like why I love you because you speak so directly and it of course it's going to provoke, but that's what we need. I do see that as what we need more of. It's it's not holding back. Speaking your truth, man. Keep doing that.
How